In this lecture, we're going to learn about imperfect competition and price discrimination. Price discrimination can occur in any of the imperfect market structures, meaning monopoly, oligopoly, or monopolistic competition. So, what is price discrimination? It is when a firm sells the same good to different customers at different prices. And like I mentioned, this cannot happen in a perfectly competitive market. The firm has to have market power to be able to do this. So this is easiest for a monopoly producer, and it would be still fairly easy for an oligopolist. It would be more difficult for a monopolistic competitor. So the more market power a firm has, the easier it is for them to price discriminate. And price discrimination happens because the firm recognizes that there are multiple demand curves for their product. So the price changes depending on what different customer groups are willing to pay. They recognize that some customers may have more elastic demand, other customers may have more inelastic demand, and some people will pay a higher price, other people will pay a lower price. And so to maximize their benefits, they're going to charge different people different prices. These factors make price discrimination easier. First of all, there can't be any close substitutes for the product. If there are, price discrimination doesn't work because people will just go buy the substitute product instead at a lower price. Price discrimination is easier if the product or service cannot be resold easily, okay, because if I can purchase it, if I qualify or I'm able to get it at a lower price and I can turn around and resell it at a higher price, that kind of defeats the price discrimination purpose. So it has to be something that cannot be easily resold, so something that either will spoil quickly or something that is a very personal item that just it's attached to your name, so it can't be resold to someone else. And categories of consumers have to be able to be easily separated in the market. The producer has to be able to definitely break up the consumers into groups and be able to separate those groups for this to be able to work. So the firm, as we've said now, has to be a price setter. They have to have market power, and they have to be able to identify consumers whose elasticities differ. Okay, so for customers who have more elastic demand, they are going to want to charge prices that are lower, and for customers who have more inelastic demand, they're going to want to charge prices that are higher. So here's some examples from reality of different firms that have price discriminated. First of all, cell phone packages. Okay, cell phone packages are not all created equal, and they are offered at a variety of prices depending on the features that you want, the number of minutes, whether you want data, whether you want 4G or 3G, and whether you want roaming, and whether you have a smartphone or not, and whether you want texting, and all those other things. Airline tickets. Okay, airline tickets cannot be resold to someone else. They're attached to you. They have your name on the ticket, and you can't get on the plane if it's not your name on the ticket. So once you buy it, it's yours. Quantity discounts. If you're willing and able to buy a whole bunch at once, you can get oftentimes products at cheaper per unit cost, but again, you have to be willing to purchase a lot, and also willing to buy a membership to some of these clubs that offer these quantity discounts. Financial aid. Okay, scholarships are an example of price discrimination that schools offer to students. You may be attending a class with 70 or 80 or 120 other people, and you all may have paid a different price for your education, but you're taking the same course. Colleges oftentimes price discriminate depending on what year you are in at your school. So sometimes like transfer students that come in junior year have a higher per credit cost than students who've been there all 4 years. There are many examples of price discrimination in secondary education, college education. The two-part tariff is another example of price discrimination. For example, Valley Fair. You pay one price to get into the park, and then you pay another price if you want to buy extra concessions or play extra games, things like that. The State Fair would also be another example of a two-part tariff because you pay your 9 or 10 or however many bucks it is to get in these days. It's getting so expensive. And then you pay for everything you want to do in the fair as well. Utility rates. Depending on where you live, you're going to get charged different amounts for your utility rates. If you live in an area with a more transient population where people tend to move a lot and possibly move before they pay their electric bill, you're going to pay a higher per watt electric fee. Discount coupons. People who are willing and able to coupon are also going to enjoy lower prices, but they have to put in a lot of time to clip the coupons and line them up with the sales, or go through all that strategic planning. And so therefore couponing is another example of price discrimination. Some people pay a higher price. Other people who are willing to put in the work are going to be able to pay a lower price for the same good. So effects of price discrimination. Well, first of all, deadweight loss is reduced in the market. A price discriminating producer is going to set output as a perfectly competitive firm would. So we mentioned in the Monopoly and Public Policy lecture that a perfect competitor will set price or set output where price equals marginal cost, because in perfect competition, price is the same thing as marginal revenue, so we can, through substitution, say, hey, a perfect competitor's profit maximizing output is where P equals MC. And so this price discriminating producer is going to do the same thing, which is going to cause them to produce a greater quantity of the product and increase the firm's allocative efficiency, because they're going to be producing where demand equals supply. But this is different from imposing regulation on the producer, because they're not forced to sell all their units of output at this same price, but rather they're going to be selling their output at multiple prices. So this is going to cause producer surplus to increase and producer profits to increase, because the producers will be selling more product and charging a variety of prices. And the consumer surplus will decrease, as people are going to pay a price closer to their reservation price. So let's take a look at these effects graphically here. Remember, a perfect price discriminator is going to set output where price equals marginal cost, to eliminate deadweight loss and eliminate consumer surplus. So in the example on the left here, we see a profit maximizing producer. Here's the approximate consumer and producer surplus and deadweight loss that would result in the market if the firm were producing at their profit maximizing quantity of output. And on the right here, we'll see what happens when the firm price discriminates and sets price equal to marginal cost to set their output. You can see that if they're a perfect price discriminator, meaning they can charge every customer the highest price the customer is willing and able to pay, then they actually eliminate all the consumer surplus and eliminate all the deadweight loss altogether. In this graphic here, we can see that the more possible prices, the more categories the monopolist or the price discriminating producer, whichever imperfect market structure they fit into, is able to charge, the closer they can get to perfect price discrimination. Perfect price discrimination is awesome from a producer's point of view. It's questionable from a consumer's point of view, because from the producer's point of view, if you can charge every customer the maximum they're willing to pay, you're going to maximize your profits as much as possible. From a consumer's point of view, it's always good to have consumer surplus, but at least with price discrimination, more is going to be offered in the market. They're going to be closer to the allocatively efficient quantity, or maybe even achieve the allocatively efficient quantity. So there will be more available to consumers in the industry. But if perfect price discrimination isn't an option, meaning they can charge every customer the most they are possibly willing and able to pay for the product, you can see here that even if they only have 2 prices or 3 prices or 4 or 5, the more prices they offer, the more producer surplus there will be and the less consumer surplus there will be for the product. Alright, and that brings us to the end of the notes here, so make sure you jot down a couple questions. We will go through an example with some data in class to make this all make sense, but just make sure you understand the basic concept that when a firm has the market power to price discriminate, they're able to increase their producer surplus and increase their profits, and also eliminate or cause deadweight loss and consumer surplus to shrink.